Hey, what's going on guys? Trunkoso here, back at you again with a brand new Zombies Top 5 video, and today I want to go a little bit more in depth about a map that is very dear to me and that holds a special place in my heart. You probably know it and you probably love it. Of course, it is the one and only Mob of the Dead from Black Ops 2 Zombies, or what I like to call it, one of my all-time favorite maps in Call of Duty Zombies. Now don't worry guys, I'm not going to go full Zombies nerd on you and talk about how much I love this map like everyone else does, even though I'd love to, but I think it's been praised enough. No, see, today I actually want to talk about a few things that have always sort of bothered me on the map that I feel like could have been easily fixed and ultimately make Mob an even greater map than it already is. Now keep in mind again, I absolutely love this map, and this video is in no way meant to attack it, but as a huge fan and as someone who really cares and is passionate about it, I feel like I need to drop in my 2 cents and give Mob a few critiques, and to acknowledge some of the flaws I've noticed in the last 8 years or so of playing it. Wait, this map is over 8 years old now? Damn, I'm old as But before I get started, I just want to remind any of you watching that aren't already subscribed to my channel yet to go ahead and hit subscribe so that way you won't miss any future uploads. It only takes one click of a mouse or a tapping of your screen if you're watching this on your phone or on an iPad. And if you end up enjoying this video, be sure to drop a like as always. And one last thing before I start, I'm really sorry for not getting this video out sooner. College has been pretty tough when it comes to schoolwork, so it's been a bit more difficult to upload, so again, I do apologize for that. But alright, without further ado, let's hop into the 5 changes that I think would make Mob of the Dead an even greater map. So coming in at the number 5 spot on my list of things I would change with Mob of the Dead is something that admittedly isn't really that big of an issue for me, but rather it's just something that I've always thought could have improved the higher rounds on Mob, but that change would be to buff the damage on the map's wonder weapon, the blundergat, but more specifically the upgraded version of it, the vitrolic withering. So this one again is my lowest change on the list because I feel like the vitrolic withering is already a great and overall well-balanced wonder weapon, but at the same time I have to admit there's a part of me that wishes that this thing was just a bit more powerful, especially in the higher rounds. So the vitrolic withering already has pretty good damage, but after I would say round 40, round 45, it falls off pretty quickly, and by the time round 50 comes along, it takes multiple shots to kill a single horde of zombies. Now granted, this isn't necessarily too bad in my opinion because at the end of the day, this thing is still extremely helpful as a distraction device. And for those of you who don't know, every time you shoot this thing, it's basically like you're shooting acidic monkey bombs that the zombies will be attracted to, and after a couple of seconds the bombs go off and they eliminate any zombies that are nearby. So in theory, as long as you're set up with the right perks and preferably a shield, it's actually very hard to go down while you're using this thing. So really this change isn't too necessary, like I said, just because I feel like the distraction and safety elements of this wonder weapon balance out the drop in damage in the later rounds, but personally I would have really liked to see this thing maybe last just a little bit longer, say up until maybe like round 50 or so, but luckily the Hell's Redeemer or the Tomahawk is also on this map and it does infinite damage, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I think giving a slight buff to the vitrolic withering would be a nice little change, but all in all it's still very good the way it is now. Alright, so coming in as the 4th change on my list, I would add more weapons to the box. Now, this change is similar to the number 5 spot in the sense that this isn't really something that is seriously needed, as there's already a decent amount of weapons on the map like the Galil, the AK-47, the Mark II, the blundergat, etc. But the reason I decided to go with this change is because over time and after hitting the box on this map for years, I always sort of felt like there weren't a lot of good guns in the box other than the things I just said. So for this one I actually did some research and I went on over to the Zombies Wikipedia page for Mob of the Dead, and upon scrolling down to the box guns that are on that map, it turns out there's only 17 guns that you can get from the box on Mob specifically, not counting cell block on Grief. But upon first glance, 17 weapons may not sound like too low of an amount, but if you compare this to the rest of the Black Ops 2 maps, it's pretty obvious that Mob has the least weapon variety out of any map, or at least when it comes to hitting the mystery box. So to fix this problem, I would suggest adding more weapon variety to the box. For example, I think guns like the M27 from Nuketown Zombies, the Scar H from Origins, the Scorpion Evo, or the M1216 could have been really awesome to see on this map, and they would all serve a great purpose. Not only would they give more replayability to the map in my opinion, but they would also give a lot more people a greater incentive to hit the box more often. Because when you think about it now, like yeah, the chances are you're probably going to hit the box at some point in your game, but when you consider the fact that there's actually a way to get a free blundergat without hitting the box, and that the Tommy gun and the Uzi are already wall weapons on the map that can hold their own, really I feel like other than getting the Mark II and maybe like 3 or 4 other guns that are pretty good on their own, the box doesn't serve as great of a purpose, and there's often games where I may only hit it just once to see if I can get a lucky Mark II roll, or I may just not even bother hitting it at all. But again, like number 5, I don't think this change is too necessary, but it still would be a pretty sick change in my opinion, and I certainly wouldn't be complaining if this was already a thing. So, bigger weapon variety comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 on my list of changes I would make to Mob of the Dead, I would definitely get rid of the jerry can system on the map. For those of you who don't know, on Mob of the Dead, after you go to the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time to pack a punch and then come back to Alcatraz, you'll get a notification on the next round that says you'll need to pick up 5 jerry cans around the map in order to refuel the plane that you took to pack a punch. Now to most people this may not sound like too big of an issue having to do it only once or twice, but trust me, over time you'll almost definitely start to get annoyed by having to do this over and over again. Especially because all 5 of the jerry cans are so far apart from each other, and you basically have to traverse every part of the map to collect them all. And to add the cherry to the very tedious sundae, there's no stamina up on this map, so you have to run around the whole map without it, and trust me, it sucks having to do that all the time. So to fix this, I have a very simple solution, and that is just to get rid of them. Now, I know this sounds like a bold choice from a first glance, but hear me out, I think this is actually a viable decision. You see, in Mob, the storyline for the most part of this map is that the 4 gangsters are trapped in a never-ending cycle of purgatory, where they can go as many times as possible to the Golden Gate Bridge as they want, but they can't actually escape their prison, because every time they leave the bridge, they end up back on Alcatraz. So knowing this, I feel like it would only make sense to assume that because they're going back in time, that the first time they went to the bridge, in theory, should have never happened, meaning they only need to ride the plane again one time as if it was their first ride to the bridge. I think this technicality can actually justify removing the jerry can system, because why would they have to refuel the plane if they hadn't even taken off yet, right? Now, I'm probably going way too far with this, and I'm sure there's probably a loophole in my argument, but to be quite frank, I really don't give a Having to constantly hunt for jerry cans just to pack a punch sucks. I don't like it, and I feel like out of everything on this list, this is probably one of the more common complaints I see from other people in the community, and I definitely understand why. So, getting rid of jerry cans comes in at number 3. And coming in at number 2 on my list of changes I would make to Mob of the Dead, I would try to make the Easter egg more fun. But before I get into my idea of how to make the Easter egg more enjoyable, I want to mention a few things about this egg beforehand. First off, I think the whole concept of the mobsters being stuck in purgatory is actually really sick and pretty intelligent, if I may add. And I really like the fact that the players have the option of either continuing the cycle by killing Weasel, or by ending it altogether by having Weasel kill Sal, Finn, and Billy. I will admit that this aspect adds replayability to this Easter egg, but other than that, I also sadly have to admit that I kind of think the process of beating this Easter egg is pretty underwhelming and very repetitive. The first part of the Easter egg is pretty easy. You're basically just setting up with everything on the map, going to pack a punch via the plane, and then coming back to Alcatraz. After that, you have to fly back to the bridge 2 more times for a total of 3 trips. After you're done with your 3rd trip, you'll need to put in a code via Afterlife into the machine you use when you're getting one of the plane parts earlier in the setup process, and as soon as you're done with that, you need to go around the map and listen to some audio quotes, and then you'll be able to move on to the second to final step. Once all players in the game are ready, they need to go back into Afterlife and ride the plane to the bridge, and as soon as everyone is back into their bodies, the final step is to either kill Weasel or have the player playing as Weasel kill the others, and that's pretty much the whole Easter egg. Now while I can appreciate the simplicity of it, I do have a few critiques about this Easter egg. The biggest one is that obviously you can't fully complete this in solo, but my other critique is that this egg is too repetitive at times. While I understand that having to go back to the bridge makes sense due to the mobsters being in a never-ending cycle, I feel like there was definitely a missed opportunity to add some more steps to this egg that would have overall added to the experience and satisfaction with beating it, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying that this Easter egg needed to be like a Black Ops 3 Easter egg, but it could have been, in my opinion, more fun if they added some more steps and made the egg beatable in solo somehow. But at the end of the day, I can't really get upset at the developers, because in their defense, this was one of the first maps to have a serious Easter egg, so I'm definitely understanding of that. And they, of course, would go on to make some of the best Easter eggs down the line later, so Mob's Easter egg being a bit lackluster is more forgivable to me, and even though it's more simple than the other eggs, I still do enjoy doing it from time to time, and I like the storyline behind it a lot. It's definitely not a bad Easter egg, but again, I just think there could have been a bit more done to make it better, but it comes in at number 2. And finally, guys, coming in at the number 1 spot on today's list as the most needed change to Mob of the Dead, in my opinion, it would be to increase the perk variety on this map. Mob of the Dead only has 5 available perks. You've obviously got Juggernog, Speed Cola, Double Tap 2.0, and then you have Electric Cherry, which at the time was a new perk, so that was pretty cool. But then for some reason, you also have Deadshot Daiquiri on the map, which doesn't really make sense to me. Now, I'm not trying to put Deadshot down because I actually kind of like it, but I do have to admit at the same time that I think there were several better options that could have replaced it. Like Stamina Up, for example, would have been absolutely perfect for this map because Mob of the Dead is a big map, and the amount of traveling you have to do on this map is pretty crazy at times, especially after you're pack-a-punching, you have to chase the fuel cans like I talked about earlier. But out of every perk that could have been added, I feel like Stamina Up would have been the best option, but there's also 2 other perks that I think could have been really good on this map. You know what's crazy? These 2 perks are actually on the map, well, technically at least, but just like in Die Rise where Treyarch trolled us by making PhD Flopper visible but unobtainable in the map, They also did the same thing for it and Mule Kick in Mob of the Dead. Why? Why the would you do that again, Treyarch? Why do you hate us so much? But anyways, the reason I put perk variety in at number 1 is because I feel like Mob's lack of perks is actually very detrimental to the map. And the reason I say that is because generally 9.9 out of 10 times you're always going to be buying the same 4 perks. Obviously that includes Jug, Speed, Double Tap, and Cherry, because together those 4 perks basically grant you invincibility whenever you're running the Vitrolic Withering. And the reason Deadshot is almost never bought is because replacing it with any of the 4 go-tos means sacrificing a perk that benefits that setup. This leaves a lot of people in a tough position because they'll either have to decide whether they want Deadshot or Speedcola, or Deadshot or Jug, or Double Tap or Cherry, and upon coming to the logical conclusion that Deadshot gives you the least benefits, you're probably never ever going to use it in any of your games. And you know what sucks even more? This could have been easily remedied by just opening up a 5th perk slot to allow people to buy every perk on the map, but sadly on Mob you're only limited to carrying 4 perks. If they had just added more perks and opened up more perk slots like they did in Origins, I would already see a much better map. Like, just imagine having PhD Flopper. It would instantly make the Mustang and Sally's, the Ray Gun, the RPG, and the Vitrolic Withering much more viable long term in the game. Especially considering that Mob for the most part is pretty close quarters, I feel like PhD would fit in pretty well. And believe it or not, I actually think Mule Kick would have been a great choice on this map as well, because despite the lack of guns in the box, there are definitely enough guns that are good enough that you would probably want to carry 3 weapons, and when I think of the different possible setups that you could have run with Mule Kick, I only get more upset. Imagine if you wanted to camp with this perk. You could run the Death Machine, the Vitrolic Withering, and maybe a Mark II. Or if you want to get a more mobile class, you could run the Vitrolic Withering with an Uzi and a Mark II, or the Galil, or the AK, but my point overall is that Mule Kick would have definitely added replayability to Mob, no doubt in my mind. And even though I already mentioned Stamina Up, I just want to say one more time that it is sorely missed and was probably the most needed perk for the map. But yeah, overall my biggest problem with Mob of the Dead is that there simply aren't enough perks on this map, and having to get the same 4 over and over again definitely feels repetitive, so my number 1 change without a doubt would be to just simply add more perks to the map. With that being said, you guys, this is going to conclude today's Zombies Top 5. If you found this video entertaining in any way, or if you agreed with anything on my list, don't forget to leave a like on today's video, and also feel free to share your opinions or comments down below, whether you agreed or disagreed with anything I said. I really enjoy hearing your guys' opinions and feedback, because oftentimes I see some really good and intelligent and sometimes pretty funny comments, and I love reading them all. Also, again, I would like to remind anyone viewing who isn't subscribed to consider doing so, as that way you won't miss any of my future uploads. But anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. This is Troncoso, signing off. Bye.